The little girl was a flash of pink against the grim asphalt, her tiny sneakers slapping the pavement in a desperate, uneven rhythm. Tears streamed down her face, carving clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. She didn't scream, not anymore. Her terror had boiled down to a single, focus point of action, a tiny missile of desperation aimed at the one thing on this quiet suburban street that looked powerful enough to stop a monster. A dozen Harley-Davidsons were parked in a staggered line in front of the local diner, their chrome engines cooling with soft ticking sounds. The men who owned them were a wall of leather, denim, and steel, their vests adorned with the winged death's head of the Hells Angels. They were laughing, trading stories over coffee, their deep voices a rumbling counterpoint to the afternoon quiet. Then the little girl, Maya, burst through their circle, her small hand grabbing the worn leather of the nearest man's chaps. He was huge, a mountain of a man with a beard like tangled barbed wire, and he looked down, his laughter dying in his throat. Every biker froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. The little girl looked up, not at the man she grabbed, but at the one who sat at the head of the pack, the one with the president patch on his vest. His eyes, the color of storm clouds, met hers. Her voice was a ragged whisper, a sound that cut through the engine ticks and the distant bird song. "Please," she sobbed, her whole body trembling. "He's going to hurt Mommy." The president, a man they called Ryder, was off his stool in an instant, the metal legs scraping against the concrete. He moved with a fluid grace that belied his size, kneeling down so he was eye level with the child. The scent of road dust, leather, and gasoline surrounded her. But for the first time in hours, she didn't feel afraid. "Who's going to hurt your mommy, little one?" Ryder's voice was a low, gravelly rumble, like an engine turning over, yet it held a gentleness that shocked his own men. Maya pointed a trembling finger back the way she had come, towards a pristine two-story house with a perfectly manicured lawn and cheerful yellow shutters. It looked like a picture from a magazine, a symbol of domestic tranquility. But Maya's terror painted a different picture, one of a gilded cage hiding unspeakable horrors. "Daddy," she choked out. He locked the doors. He said Mommy would never leave. Ryder's jaw tightened, a muscle flexing along the hard line of his chin. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of his own sister, years ago. A memory, sharp and poisoned, lanced through him. He had been too late then. A vow made over a cold grave echoed in his soul. Never again. He looked at the man whose leg Maya was still clutching, a giant they called Grizz. "Grizz, stay with the kid." Then he turned to the rest of his chapter, his eyes sweeping over them, hard and unyielding. "We're going to pay a visit." There were no questions, no dissents. The code was the code. A child had asked for help. For the Hells Angels, that was a sacred call to arms. The air crackled with a new energy as leather creaked and boots hit the pavement. Inside the yellow house, Clara was on her knees, scrubbing a wine stain from the plush white carpet. It wasn't wine. It was her own blood from the glass her husband, Sterling, had shattered against the wall just inches from her head. The shard that had sliced her cheek was still on the mantelpiece, a glittering ruby-red threat. "You thought you could run?" Sterling's voice was silk-wrapped steel, his tone conversational, which was always more terrifying than his yelling. He circled her, his expensive Italian shoes silent on the rug. "You thought you could take my daughter and just disappear? After everything I've given you?" He gestured around the opulent living room, the designer furniture, the original art. To him, these were gifts. To her, they were the bars of her cage. Clara kept her head down, her dark hair hiding her face. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. Maya. Where was Maya? She had seen her daughter slip out the back door while Sterling was ranting, a tiny, brave shadow. It was a desperate, impossible gamble, but it was the only one she had left. Sterling had found the packed bag in the back of her closet that morning, a small duffel with a few clothes for her and Maya, and all the cash she had managed to squirrel away over the past year. It wasn't much, but it was supposed to be their ticket to freedom. Now, it was the evidence for her conviction. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," he hissed, grabbing a handful of her hair and yanking her head back. Pain exploded behind her eyes. "You are nothing without me. You will go nowhere. You will do nothing unless I permit it." His face was close, his breath smelling of expensive whiskey. His eyes, usually a cold, calculating blue, were now blazing with a possessive fury that promised violence. This was it. This was the end she had always feared. He was going to do more than just hit her this time. The look in his eyes promised annihilation. She thought of Maya, alone outside, and a prayer formed on her lips, a silent plea to any god that might be listening. Let her be safe. Let someone find her. Let someone, anyone, help us. That's when she heard it. A low rumble, distant at first, then growing louder, closer. It wasn't a car. It was deeper, more guttural. A chorus of them. It sounded like rolling thunder, and it was coming right down their street. Ryder stood with his men across the street, partially concealed by a large oak tree. They watched the house, their faces grim masks. Grizz stood beside him, Maya's small hand now tucked safely in his massive one. She was quiet, her wide, frightened eyes fixed on her front door. "Place is a fortress." Another biker, a wiry man named Stitch who was the club's tech expert, muttered. "For cameras visible from here. But he's got more. Probably got the whole place wired." Ryder didn't need cameras to see the evil inside. He could feel it radiating from the house, a cold sickness that tainted the sunny afternoon. He remembered his sister, Sarah. Her husband had been a pillar of the community, a charming lawyer who charmed everyone but the woman he brutalized behind closed doors. Ryder had seen the bruises she tried to hide with makeup, heard the fear in her voice she tried to mask with laughter. He'd offered to help, to get her out, but she was too scared, too convinced no one could stand up to her husband's power and influence. By the time she finally found the courage to leave, it was too late. The official report said she fell down the stairs. Ryder knew better. He had carried that failure, that burning rage and guilt for a decade. It was the fuel that powered his personal code. He might wear the patch of an outlaw, but his soul was bound by a stricter law. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. "He's not expecting us," Ryder said, his voice low. "He's expecting the cops. He thinks he can talk his way out of anything with a badge. He won't know how to talk to us." He turned to his men. "Cutter, you and Bones take the front. Make some noise. Lots of it. Get his attention. Stitch, you're with me and Grizz. We're going through the back. No satelti. The door comes down. We get the woman. We get out. We clear." Nods of assent all around. There was a grim determination in their eyes. This wasn't a bar fight or a turf war. This was a rescue. This was a holy mission. "What about him?" Grizz asked, his gaze like granite. "What do we do with the husband?" Ryder looked from the pristine house back to the terrified little girl clutching Grizz's hand. He thought of his sister's broken body and the man who had walked away without a scratch. "We leave a message," Ryder said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "One he'll never forget. He knelt down one last time in front of Maya. We're going to get your mommy now. I need you to stay right here with our friend. Can you be brave for a few more minutes?" Maya nodded, her eyes welling up with tears again. But this time, they were tears of hope. She watched as Ryder and the other men pulled on their helmets, the dark visors hiding their expressions but not the intensity of their purpose. Ryder gave a sharp nod. The plan was in motion. The thunder was about to break. The roar of two Harley-Davidsons splitting the suburban silence was like a declaration of war. Cutter and Bones peeled away from the group, their bikes thundering down the street and skidding to a halt directly in front of Sterling's manicured lawn, tearing up the perfect grass. They revved their engines, a deafening, syncopated blast of noise and exhaust fumes that vibrated through the entire neighborhood. Lights flicked on in neighboring houses. Curtains were pulled back. Inside, Sterling flinched at the sudden assault on his quiet kingdom. He let go of Clara's hair, his rage momentarily diverted. "What the hell is that?" he snarled, striding toward the front window. He peered through the blinds, his face contorting in a mask of arrogant disbelief. "Degenerate filth," he spat, seeing the leather vests and the club patches. "Probably lost. I'll call the police. Have them arrested for trespassing He turned back to Clara, a cruel smirk on his lips. See? This is the world you want to run to? Full of animals. You belong here, with me, where you're safe. Clara scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding. The noise outside was terrifying, but it was also a distraction. It was a chance. As Sterling turned his back to grab his phone, his focus entirely on the bikers out front. Ryder, Grizz, and Stitch were moving silently and swiftly along the side of the house. They kept low, using the hedges for cover, their movements practiced and economical. They were predators in their element. Stitch knelt by the back door, a small toolkit in his hand. Standard lock, electronic keypad, but the deadbolt is manual. Give me 10 seconds. We don't have 10, Ryder growled, his eyes fixed on the kitchen window. He could see Clara's silhouette. Grizz needed no further instruction. He took 2 steps back, lowered his shoulder, and launched his massive frame at the door. The sound was not a crack, but an explosion of splintering wood and shrieking metal. The door, the frame, and a good chunk of the wall blew inward. The chaos had begun. The bikers at the front revved their engines even louder, a coordinated symphony of mechanical fury to cover the sound of the breach. Sterling spun around, his phone dropping from his hand, his face a picture of shock and fury. What the? He never finished the sentence. 3 figures, clad in black leather and radiating pure menace, filled the ruined doorway. They were bigger, more real, and infinitely more dangerous than the men he'd seen out front. These were not lost travelers. They were invaders. Clara let out a strangled cry, a mix of terror and overwhelming relief. She saw Grizz first, a giant who moved with impossible speed, placing his body between her and Sterling. Go, he grunted, his voice a low rumble. Get to the door. Now she didn't hesitate. She ran, her bare feet slapping against the cold tile of the kitchen floor. Ryder stepped forward, his gaze locking with Sterling's. In that moment, the entire dynamic of the room shifted. Sterling, who had been the undisputed king of this castle, the master of his domain, was suddenly and completely powerless. His wealth, his connections, his carefully constructed facade of authority, it all evaporated in the face of the raw, primal authority standing before him. Who the hell do you think you are? Sterling stammered, trying to reclaim some semblance of control. This is my house. I'll have you all in prison. Ryder just smiled, a cold, predatory baring of teeth that held no humor. Your house, he said, his voice dangerously calm as he advanced slowly into the room. These 4 walls? This is just a box. You don't own anything. Especially not her. The confrontation was a clash of 2 worlds. Sterling, in his tailored suit, represented a civilized, corporate evil, one that hid behind laws and money. Ryder was the opposite, a raw, untamed force of justice, a man who operated by a code written not in law books, but in blood and loyalty. Sterling, realizing his usual tools of intimidation were useless, panicked. His eyes darted around the room, landing on the block of chef's knives on the kitchen counter. It was a foolish, desperate move. As he lunged for the knives, Stitch moved like a viper, kicking the block off the counter. The expensive cutlery clattered across the floor. At the same time, Ryder closed the distance. He didn't throw a punch. He simply grabbed the front of Sterling's expensive shirt, lifting the man off his feet with one hand as if he weighed nothing. Sterling's feet dangled inches from the floor, his face turning a blotchy red. You like to hurt women? Ryder's voice was a venomous whisper, his face inches from Sterling's. You like to feel big by making someone else feel small? Sterling choked, his hands clawing uselessly at Ryder's iron grip. I don't know what you're talking about. Ryder slammed him against the wall, the impact rattling the fine china in a nearby cabinet. A framed photo of Sterling and Clara on their wedding day. A portrait of a lie. Crash of the floor, the glass shattering. I think you do, Ryder growled. Let me make it simple for you. You will never see her again. You will never see your daughter again. You will sign whatever papers she puts in front of you. You will not call her. You will not contact her. If I even hear your name whispered in the same town she's in, I will come back. And when I come back, he leaned in closer, his voice dropping so low it was barely audible. There won't be any talking. He held Sterling there for a long moment, letting the terror sink in, letting the man truly understand the new reality of his life. Then, with a grunt of disgust, he dropped him. Sterling crumpled to the floor, a heap of expensive fabric and broken pride, gasping for air. Ryder didn't give him a second glance. He turned and walked out the ruined back door, leaving Sterling alone amidst the wreckage of his perfect life. The message had been delivered. Outside, the world was a blur of motion and emotion. Grizz had guided Clara around the side of the house, shielding her from view. She saw Maya, then, safe, standing beside another biker, and her legs almost gave out. She collapsed to her knees, pulling her daughter into a fierce, sobbing embrace. "Mommy," Maya cried, clinging to her. "I was so scared, I know. Baby, I know." Clara wept, stroking her hair. "You were so brave. You saved us. You saved me." She looked up, her vision blurred by tears, at the circle of leather-clad men surrounding them. They were terrifying and beautiful, her guardian angels from hell. Their faces were hard, their eyes intense, but she saw no judgment, only a fierce, unwavering protectiveness. Ryder walked over, his helmet now off, revealing the lines of experience and sorrow etched on his face. He knelt in front of her, his expression softening. He pulled a burner phone from his vest pocket and pressed it into her hand. "There's one number in here," he said, his voice returning to its gentle rumble. "Mine. If you ever need anything, if he ever comes near you, you call it. We'll handle it." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "No one is ever going to hurt you again. I promise." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing steadily closer. The time for talk was over. "We gotta go," Stitch called out. The bikers moved as one, swinging their legs over their bikes. Cutter and Bones, their diversion complete, rejoined the pack. With a final, meaningful look at Clara and Maya, Ryder mounted his own Harley. He gave a sharp nod, and with a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the quiet street, the Hell's Angels turned and rode away. They disappeared over the horizon just as the first police cruiser screamed onto the block, leaving behind a shattered door, a broken man, and a woman and child who were finally, miraculously free. The police found a scene of confusion. A hysterical man claiming he'd been attacked by a biker gang, a terrified woman and child who would only say that he had fallen, and a back door that looked like it had been hit by a truck. There was no evidence of the bikers, save for some torn-up grass and the lingering scent of gasoline. With no one to press charges against the intruders, and with Clara finally finding the voice to tell the police about years of abuse, Sterling was the one who ended up in handcuffs. His power, his influence, it all crumbled under the weight of his own monstrous actions, now brought into the light. Weeks turned into months. Clara and Maya moved to a small, quiet town 1,000 miles away. They had a small apartment, not a mansion, but every corner of it was filled with peace. Clara got a job at a local library. She saw a therapist. She learned to sleep through the night without fear. The scars, both visible and invisible, began to fade, replaced by a resilience she never knew she possessed. She told Maya stories, not of a monster in a big house, but of brave knights who rode loud, shiny horses, and answered the call of a little girl in need. Sometimes, on a quiet evening, she would hear the distant rumble of a motorcycle passing on the highway, and she wouldn't flinch. She would smile. She'd take out the burner phone Ryder had given her, its battery still full, and hold it in her hand, a modern-day talisman. It was a promise, a symbol of the day her life was given back to her by the most unlikely of saviors. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, forged in fear, but tempered by the fire of unexpected kindness. Far away, on a long, empty stretch of highway, Ryder rode at the head of his pack. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The wind was a constant roar in his ears, a song of freedom. Grizz pulled up alongside him, a grin on his face. Heard through the grapevine that Sterling fellow took a plea deal, he shouted over the engines. 20 years. Won't be seeing the light of day for a long, long time. Ryder nodded. a rare, small smile touching his lips. He thought of Maya's terrified face, and then of the fierce, relieved hug she gave her mother. He thought of his sister, Sarah, and the promise he had made to her memory. Today he had kept it. The road stretched out before them, an endless ribbon of possibility. They were outlaws, rejects, men the world preferred to fear. But they knew who they were. They were brothers. They were protectors. They were the thunder that rolls in when a monster thinks he's safe, the righteous storm that breaks to wash away the darkness. Heroes don't always wear shining armor or fly through the sky. Sometimes they wear leather, ride steel, and answer the desperate prayer of a child. For every survivor fighting their own battle in the dark, remember this: you are not alone. There is strength you haven't yet discovered, and help in places you least expect. Share this story if you believe that the heart of a hero can beat beneath a leather vest. Comment with your own stories of unexpected courage, and let's ride together in support of those who need it most.